Alright, for today's lesson, we'll be covering the final bit on tourism. First cluster on tourism, right? Okay, how do tourist destinations regions develop over time? So for this part, we are looking at the general developmental stages that most tourist destinations go through over a long period of time. Okay, so there are seven fixed stages that is professed by this theory here. So seven key stages of tourism development. Um, the stages tend to be repeated across your tourist development in different countries. However, the duration within each stage varies. So there are some countries that spend a much longer time on exploration, or in the development stage, they do a lot of development and redevelopment even, and then the consolidation stage is a very short period of time before they hit stagnation. And between stagnation and either taking decline or going into rejuvenation, that is also time dependent. And I think the key thing to remember here is when you're looking at these stages, right, the varying factor is actually the time itself, the duration of which in which each of these various tourist destinations take to cover each of these stages, right? So when we start with, okay, we are at the very beginning is the exploration stage. This is where the government normally comes in and express interest in developing tourism in their country. So what do they normally do? They will create most of the time a tourism ministry, or some ministry that is in existence will adopt uh, this development of tourism in their country. So it could be the economic board, right? It could be like in Singapore, we have a specific government agency called Singapore Tourism Board that does this now. So this interest expressed by the government will then be followed up by development of some tourist infrastructure. Now, the key thing to note here, some of these tourist infrastructures, right, may have already been there, okay, but originally they were not developed as or they were not meant to be purely tourist infrastructure lah. So they have been repurposed, okay, and they have been developed a little bit further, and maybe some upgrading here and there, so that it can then better cater to the needs of tourists on top of its original purposes. So things like transport, accommodation, right? So these are things that what we're looking at. Accommodations, right? So keep this in mind. Right? The tendency is to depend on really on existing services and attractions are already there. So if you already have your island nation in near the equator, right? You have summer all year round, beautiful beaches. Hey, it's very likely the government will look at it and like, hey, everybody's earning big bucks from tourism. Let's just do something with what we have, right? So just work on what we have, existing services or existing attractions, and then just maybe build a bigger airport. Maybe we build a runway. We never had a runway, so planes can't land here. So tourists have to come by boat. Let's build a runway, right? So this is what we're talking about when we are looking at the exploration stage. Next, the involvement stage is where more services and businesses, okay, private businesses now come in. So you really started, the government has already kick-started, and there are already some form of a tourism infrastructure in place, right? Some hotels, some basic, maybe Airbnb or even some homestays, right? Some fishermen doubling up as travel tourist transportation for the tourists to the island. Okay, then this is when more businesses come in. So you have maybe a regular ferry service. Okay, now one key problem with involvement stage is sometimes the original charm of the place, right? Is if you were known as the abandoned beach, where nobody knows about it. So the first time you visit this place is amazing. There's no tourists, it's a couple of locals only. The beaches are white and pristine, not a single piece of trash everywhere, anywhere in sight. Okay, the animals don't know any better. They come right up to you, can pet the pigs, the wild pigs around, right? You can swim in the waters, the penguins come in, the sea turtles come, yeah. But as more and more people come in, right, with the involvement stage, you lose this, okay? You lose this original charm, right? People comment like, oh, it's not what it used to be, right? Remember the good old days? That's when you know you've lost your original charm, okay? So as a country in the involvement stage, it's a fine line, okay, and the line continues to get finer and finer as you try to develop your tourism without losing some of your original attractions, right? Or maybe you need to do some upgrading to deal with the continued use okay, and abused by tourists, okay, and continue to refine, maybe build new attractions, right? Then you become known as the party central of Southeast Asia. We have full parties, barbecues, and the not. Okay, right. So generally, this is visually right what you tend to look like. Okay, seaside resort, right, which originally really had corals and all these things, right? So who will visit this kind of destination at the exploration stage? Normally, very adventurous tourists because there's really not a lot of infrastructure there, right? Visits will not be regular. You will not go repeated visits. Okay, um, they will not make much economic contribution to the local economy. Maybe they pay the fishermen a little bit, but it's very little, okay, because there isn't infrastructure to absorb this tourism receipts and to attract them to spend money there first. Okay. Involvement stage, the one that we talked about earlier, right, where you have more public facilities. So you look at what is being built here. You have your roads that are being built already, right? You have tourist-centered goods and services, right? The souvenir shops and all that, and you have cafes that have risen to cater to the tourists. Okay, compared to the original one, you probably had a cafe that catered to locals or coffee shop, right? So at this point here, what kind of tourists will you see? You will see more and more of them because the awareness of the destination, word of mouth, or maybe some crazy YouTuber comes and does an amazing vlog of your place, and then it goes viral. Okay, then you will then have the introduction of a peak and an off-peak season, right? Because even like in the monsoonal belts, right, when you have monsoon, the seaside area is probably not going to be the best thing to go to. And at this point, tourists will be contributing to the local economy because of things that are targeted at tourists, things that are services and places that are built there to attract the tourist dollar, okay, to spend money there. So then at this point onwards, the money makes sense really. Okay, and this is where the government will take a step back and look at impact on the area versus the amount of money it's getting for the government. Okay, when is development stage? Now, development stage depends on the government, it depends on the private businesses in the area, depends on what exactly the direction of the growth is. So one key thing when you're in development stage is you will experience large amounts of tourists. Okay, the tourism arrivals will increase. It will increase very rapidly, and more locals will be employed in the tourism sector. So now it's a big wheel that's churning quite quickly. Everybody's tied into the wheel, right? Is it possible to stop tourism at this moment in time? Yes, you can. Of course, the government can come in and say no, no more tourists, right? I'm shutting down the beach. It's only for locals, right? But the government will normally not do this, because it's already at a very fast pace. You have many people depending on the tourism activities, right? Hotels, a lot of people working, theme parks, you have people working. You still have your surf shop and your cafes, right? So many people are involved in this. Really. So at this moment in time, the country draws top dollar from this, right? If it's successful and development is fast enough, right, you do eventually get even more amenities that are no longer directly linked to the original attraction, which is the resort, or the beach. Okay, so what are these things that you look at? Because if you're trying to attract someone to this location, right, for a week, right, you cannot be lying on the beach for a week, right? Let's be very frank about this. You're gonna get sunburn and it's not gonna be a pleasant experience. So you need other attractions, right? So you build things like the theme parks, you build things like a casino, you build things like USS that's starting to sound more and more like Singapore. You build more infrastructure, you build airports, seaports, right? Really sounds like Singapore, right? But bear in mind, we didn't even start with a beach, right? We had nothing. We don't have sandy beaches. We are a tropical island with muddy beaches, okay, and mangroves everywhere. So it really, your start point, it really depends on what the government sees and what the government wants to do. Consolidation stage is where everything is more or less developed already. So it's a stable state, right? Remember this word, stable state. So at this point, we're at a stable state. Everything is more or less in place. Attractions already start to slow down because you run out of space in the direct area. Tourism arrivals will outnumber, when you're in consolidation stage, most of the time the tourist arrivals outnumber the local population already. So you're serving the tourists more than you're serving the locals. Okay, the growth may drop a little bit in at this moment in time. You may have lower growth. Doesn't mean you have lower numbers. Lower growth means the increase every year on year is slower, right? It becomes a very common thing to be working in the tourist industry if you are a local in this area. And the tourism industry dominates your local economy. It could be 50% or even more, dependent on tourists. So in such countries in or tourist destinations in consolidation states are actually very risky, right? If there was a very major catastrophe or pandemic, like a global sort of a phenomena, right? And tourism grinds to a halt, everybody is out of a job. Okay, everybody is jobless, and then the government is going to have a very big problem on their hands. Right. So if you think about it, we have many countries in Southeast Asia that are very dependent on tourism now, right? Countries like Thailand, countries like Thailand, in Asia, wide in countries like Japan now, very very dependent on tourism. Okay, so what happens when you have the pandemic? These were countries that were very badly hit. Okay, as a result of the pandemic, unless they have their own um other economic activity that is non-tourist related, these countries are very badly hit when you're in consolidation state. Next, stagnation state. This is where tourist numbers have peaked and now people don't really want to come to your place anymore. Okay, if you take a look at this picture, the facilities versus what you had earlier on, you look at the corals itself, right? So this is where actually due to a long period of time where the tourists come in and there's not enough rejuvenation and there's not enough care taken to the area, your tourist destination has no longer its original luster and shine. Okay, it started to degrade, and as a result, the local economy is starting to suffer because tourists don't want to come here anymore. Okay, so destination may not be that attractive anymore, and you are losing clientele. So one option is to go into decline state, right? When you are in decline state, it means even the businesses start to pull out, right? They try to sell everything away. Local businesses close now. Less money is available because businesses not earning money. So there's no rejuvenation at all of the area, and eventually this tourist destination will cease to exist. Has this happened globally? There are no. I'm very sure there are small island destinations that are like this that have gone through cycles of decline, but within the past 5 6 years, I think tourism has become, since pre-COVID until now, tourism has become a very big money churner. So many countries are actively seeking to avoid leading towards decline stage. When they are stagnation stage, they try not to go to decline. They try to move onwards to rejuvenation, where they then focus on how can they move away from being the stagnant, how can they inject funding, so this funding to function basically to redo some of these facilities, to upgrade, to re-emerge, right, rebrand your tourist destination into a new, or to constantly make it more and more attractive to visitors. Okay, so that they will continue to come to your place. So you think about like example of Singapore, right? So what have we done over the years? We have like built as a response to slowing tourism numbers, we have built more malls, right? International malls. We brought more brands into Singapore. So now actually between Singapore, London, and Tokyo, and maybe Hong Kong, what do you want to buy is going to be the same largely, right? What else have we done? We brought in things like theme park. Okay, when we saw that there was a need, we brought in things like integrated uh IRs, okay, your integrated resorts with your hotels, your convention centers, right? Working on MICE tourism, which is meetings, incentives, conventions, and events, and having your conventions held in Singapore, having events held in Singapore, hosting Taylor Swift concerts in Singapore. So these are all the things that we've done, constantly done to maintain and to do rejuvenation. Okay, so where are we now? Actually, if you're looking at Singapore as an example, we are firmly in the rejuvenation stage. Okay, the very recently you heard about the upcoming new indoor stadium, right? So you redo facilities. It doesn't mean that you abandon the old one. Sometimes it can be a renovation. Okay, it can be renovate. It can be restore. It can also be rebuilt. Right? What is the choice that is done? It really depends on the government. It depends on the private businesses, how much money they are willing to put into the country's tourism industry to do a rejuvenation. It also has a very large part to deal with at consolidation and stagnant stage, right? Actually, consolidation stage, what kind of profits are they looking at? So it has to constantly be able to attract tourists, large numbers of tourists, bring in a lot of money, then there's a reason why I want to go to rejuvenate, right? Because when I see we're stagnating, we're losing money, I want to go back to the good old days. So by pumping in more money, you earn even more money in the future, hopefully. Okay, so this is our 7 stages, right? Bear in mind the rejuvenation and the decline state, they are options that you can take a country can take once they're at stagnation stage. Which option do they take? Some countries just don't have the funding to deal with it. Okay, they flash in a pan. Whatever money was earned earlier on was not put away, was not reinvested in or diversified. They just spend the money away, and then you realize that I have no choice. There's no money left. We go into decline. Okay, if a properly managed tourism industry would then have some sort of funding or some sort of at least niche area that they've developed, they can go into rejuvenation. So this is the first part of today's lesson, looking at the 7 stages of tourism development in most countries. Right. Finally, we're looking at the two general characteristics, categories of travelers. Now, generically, travelers form two very uh, distinct types. Okay, the first group of travelers are your dependable ones. Okay, the second one are your venturers. So what is the difference then? Okay, very significantly, these are the three key differences between the dependable and the venturous. Number one, spending patterns. Okay, what do they spend on? How much do they spend? It varies greatly between these two clear categories. Okay, source of influence. Where do they get their inspiration from? And preference for travel activities. What kind of activities do each of these prefer? So let me use an example of visiting the same location. So the location doesn't decide what travelers you entice. Okay, there can be locations that have so much variety, right? That even certain activities within the location, there is a range of choices that can satisfy both. So if you are the dependable sort of a traveler, right, in the dependable category, what you want is a familiar, recognizable benchmarks of success, right? Recommendations. Okay, you're looking for something that's a brand name. So when you're looking at food, let's say you're visiting Tokyo, you may be more interested in going to a Michelin star ramen restaurant, okay, or a ramen shop in Ginza. Right? Why Michelin star? Because you are dependable. You're looking for benchmark, okay, indicators of fame, indicators of good quality, right? So you would value things like this more. But if you're a venturer, what you want is the local experience. Okay, so this is the famous, recognized experience. This one is the true local experience. So if you are an adventurer, right, what will you be looking for when you're in Tokyo? Right, you'll be looking for the tiny hole in the wall local ramen shop in the local neighborhood of Shin-Okubo. Shin-Okubo is not local. Shin-Okubo is Little Korea, but you will be looking for that kind of experience. Okay, what the locals really view as a good ramen. Okay, similarly, if you come to Singapore, if you are the dependable kind of tourist, where will you go for your meals? You will go to the maybe Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, right? Or if you want to have hawker food, you will hunt out the one-star hawker food items that we have. Bear in mind, we only have one-star hawker food left today in 2024. Okay, it's a minced pork noodle store. Right, the chicken rice thing has lost their star. Right, if you're a venturer, wherever you go, you may be venturing into the heartlands, right? Commonwealth Crescent Food Center to try out this amazing wonton noodles that only the locals living in Singapore all rave about, right? So this is what we're looking at. Okay, if we talk about other facilities, like if you want to visit a mountain, right? So like let's say same mountain in Tokyo, Mount Takao. If you are the dependable one, you may not want the entire experience of a local visiting Mount Takao. You want to have the tourist view of it. So you take the roadway or take the what do you call it, a cable car up to mid summit, and then you hike up 30 minutes to the summit of Mount Takao and feel very accomplished taking that photo at the icon of Mount Takao at the summit, which is 599 meters. Alternatively, if you're a venturer, the same experience will take a different form, right? You may hike up from the bottom of Mount Takao, take 2 hours the day, hike all the way up, hike another hour and a half down. So the entire journey will take you 3.5 hours instead of an hour, okay, or instead of 1.5 hours. So once again, this idea of dependable tourism and the venturous, what do they want? It's a different experience. What are they able to spend? It's a different amount of money. Kind of experience that they want is different. Now, how does this tie into our idea of tourism then? Who do you want to attract? Are you able to have enough amenities and choices to attract both? If not, what would you attract? What would you aim to attract? What type of facilities are easier to build? so that you can attract that type of visitor? Is it worth attracting this type of visitors? Okay, so these are all considerations that tourism boards, countries that are embarking on tourism, countries that are already in the middle of tourism trying to do some sort of rejuvenation. Right, earlier on we talk about rejuvenation, and after that stagnation stage. So sometimes at stagnation stage, the country may, or the tourism agency may stop, take a look. Where were we? Who were we attracting? We're very successful in attracting venturers. But these venturers don't do much for us, right? The amount of money they spend is so little. Okay, the tourist receipts that we get from the venturers is so insignificant. Effort doesn't justify the outcome. So let's pivot. Let's move on. Let's rebrand ourselves. Let's come back stronger, and let's attract the rich, dependable tourists. Give them what they want. So we'll end with a stimulus video. Right, as you watch the stimulus video, these are the two questions that I need you to be thinking about. We'll while you're watching the video. Okay, so this video is about a specific location, okay, in the world. Think about the stage of tourism that of destination that the places shown in the video are in. Okay, keep that in mind. Go back to your your 7 stages. Where would you place the different places in? Okay, that area. Okay, what do you think is the personality type of the tourist who made this video? Made, because this is a tourist video, right? Like a tourist vlog. Okay, so what kind of a tourist do you think he is? What are the things that this particular videographer, this particular YouTuber, let's call him YouTuber, this particular YouTuber focus on at this location that tells you what it is? Okay, so once you have finished the stimulus video, think about it carefully. We'll have a short discussion in class subsequently. So the YouTube link is here. I will put the link in the Geography Singapore channel as well. Under the playlist, I will send the link to you in your HBL assignment as well. Okay, so watch the video and enjoy the process.